Yes, sir.
Perfect. I'm just waiting notification. Excellent. And we are live.
Live. All right.
I want to thank everyone for tuning in to a very special edition of Off the Record on the People's Podcast this afternoon. We have a magnificent guest with us coming back by popular demand and all of the requests and comments and messages that we received. We had to bring our brother back, and he was very gracious in accepting our request. That is none other than Dr. Anthony Ishmael. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum salam.
This means a lot to myself, my family, and the viewing audience of the People's Podcast that you would take time out of your busy schedule to come have a conversation with us again, sir.
Yes, and I want to thank you, Brother Joshua Muhammad, for giving me this opportunity to speak and to share this information with your listening audience. And it's been a blessing because of this, I've been in touch with a lot of the old brothers and sisters that I used to soldier with. In New York, we've been calling each other, been in touch with each other. As a result, I told you yesterday I spoke to Brother Abdul Haq Muhammad, who was formerly known as Brother Roland, formerly known as Brother Captain Gaddafi. And him and I had a very good conversation. We were reminiscing about some of the brothers and sisters who are no longer with us. And we stand upon their shoulders, because if it wasn't for those brothers and sisters who helped in the rebuilding process, and those brothers and sisters who helped to start the nation, the pioneers.
Yes, sir.
If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be reading a Quran. We wouldn't know what a Quran is. We wouldn't be saying Assalamu alaikum. So we have to give honor and thanks to those individuals for making it possible for us to be here today.
All praises due to Allah. Yes, sir. And people showing you love already across the country. Can't wait to put this on YouTube. Walaikum salam. My sister Naima sends the greetings. And thank you all for every like, share, and subscription. Okay, sir. We want to be going from in and out of prior to 75 as well as up to date. But we want to start with your time with Brother Jabril, and with what he taught you in the ministry classes and how they came about with the teachers class. Could you let us know about that?
Well, I moved to Phoenix in 1983, and I was going to Arizona State University as a college student, and I was I wanted to be a teacher, so I was in the education department at Arizona State University. Eventually, I changed majors, as most college students do, and I ended up in finance and economics. But while I was there, I became part of the community. It wasn't called Mosque Number 32; it was just called the Circle, and we were on Buckeye Road in Phoenix. And it was the original building that was originally the mosque. Their brothers and sisters had secured the building. And I had the opportunity to be part of the study group and part of the community there. And the way Brother Jabril, at that time, he was called Brother Bernard Kushmir. So we used to call him Brother B, right, for short. And he had us studying the study guides at the time that he had been putting out. This is a precursor to the study guides that we have now. Okay, these are study guides that Brother Jabril had written and put out, and we were studying these study guides, and he had study groups all over Phoenix, all over. He had one in South Phoenix, he had one in Tempe, he had one in North Phoenix, Central Phoenix. He had them all over. And these were study groups that were in the homes of the believers. And they would meet on Friday nights, and we would go over and discuss the teachings. And then we would have Wednesday night meetings where he would come and teach, because he was the minister And then, of course, Sunday we would either listen to the hookup, the broadcast, or he would teach. The he One of his assignments was he was given the assignment by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan to help the ministry class and to work with the ministry class, because prior to 1975, even though the believers jammed, like we talked about last time, I mean, the believers, the accomplishment of the Muslims was phenomenal. But the ministry class and too many of the believers were too superficial in their understanding of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. They weren't as deeply rooted as they needed to be. And so one of the assignments was that he wanted to help the minister wanted him to help the ministry or the ministers class to become more rooted and deeply rooted in the scriptures, so that this time around we wouldn't fall as easily as we did prior to 75 when the Imam took over. So some of us who were there in Phoenix, he kind of deputized a few of us. It was not just myself, it was quite a few of us that helped him to put together the curriculum, or to put together ideas to roll out, so that he could go around to the different parts of the countries and speak to the different believers. And I think he did one in 1993. He did one in Houston, Texas. He did one in California. He did a teacher's class, and he called it the teacher's class because he understood and realized that not everyone wanted to be a minister, but they wanted to teach. Some people wanted to teach the teachings. They were very good in terms of their oratory skills, but they didn't necessarily want to become a minister. Mm-hmm. And if they understood what the job of a minister was, many people would have second thoughts about wanting to be that. And it wasn't until he put that assignment on me to go to the library, and he wanted me to research what it took, what was the qualifications to become a minister in the different denominations, the Baptist church, the Methodist church. What type of schooling did those brothers have to go through? And it wasn't just speaking on a Sunday. It was pastoral counseling. It was counseling. It was maintaining the finances and church operations. It was a lot more in scope than just getting on the rostrum and speaking. Okay, it was more of being a shepherd, all right, than just speaking. So he had two separate groups. He had those who were interested in teaching, and he had those who were interested in wanting to be in the ministry in its proper sense of the word, okay? And so he developed the teacher's class, and in the teacher's class, he did things, a lot of work on scripture. I remember one time he did where he had brothers and sisters on stage, and he had people in the audience interviewing them, throwing out interview questions as if they were on a TV show. Mm-hmm. And he had them record it, and then he would critique it, and this was all part of the training. He did this in Los Angeles because he gave me the tapes. He gave me the tapes, brought the tapes back. I wasn't there, but he brought the tapes back and I listened to it. And he was training them on how to be able to conduct the interview, what to say, what not to say, how to speak through them, and these were the things that he was doing. He even had one brother in Phoenix to answer his phone so he could understand the type of phone calls a minister will get. Okay. All right. It's not just speaking on the rostrum. Okay. That's the thing that we see. We see the minister speaking and we like, yeah, all right. Yeah. I want to be that. We see all of that. No, but when you start getting phone calls from believers around the country and you get a phone call from a sister who says that her child has been molested by the man living in the home, how do you deal with that as a minister? And you better not mess up, because these are God's people. These are believers. And that's what he told me. He said, because he had me answer his phone while he was away, and I just took messages. And he says, I said, so what do you want me to do? Do you want me to respond to the people? He said, no, I don't want you to respond. Just take the messages. But he had this one brother, he had to answer. He had to deal with it, and that was the type of training that he put some of us through. The brother that he did that to, his name was Brother Rod X. Ambrose. All right. And that was one of the brothers that he did that to. And many of us he put through different types of training. I mean, collectively as a group, I remember we had to look up in the Holy Quran how many times the word sabr means patience. How many times did that show up in the Holy Quran? And this is before the internet. This is before we had the internet. So you can go on the internet and put in sabr and say how many times it shows up in the Quran. We had to actually read the whole Quran from cover to cover. All right. Another thing that he would have us do, assignment, and it's one of one of my favorites that I still use to this day, was he had us to listen to the radio, watch television, especially the news, and to relate the news to different things in the Bible and Quran, or and be able to relate what we see on the news to things that are being said in the Bible and Holy Quran, right? So that we would get sharp in terms of our prophecy, in terms of understanding prophecy. All right. And these were things that he did with us, and it wasn't just me, it was other people as well that were in the circle. And I know that he spent a lot of time with brothers and sisters in San Diego, especially Los Angeles. He spent a lot of time in Los Angeles, San Diego, Houston, and those various cities. But that was his assignment. And I know that he did a lecture in Chicago. He did a class in Chicago with the ministry class. I have that tape. I still have that, where he goes through the scripture, how to go through the Bible, and look at it as a story of a people. We're the people, right? But how to look at it, get yourself a plain English Bible that, don't get the King James, get a plain English Bible. He was very big on the ministers and the teachers having synonym and antonym books, a dictionary. He used to tell me that Malcolm's brother, Philbert Omar, used to he would ask Brother Philbert, well, what do you mean? What does it mean? Brother Omar would tell him, look it up, get the dictionary and find out what it means. So he would always do that with us. Look it up, get the definition, find out what it means, go into the etymology of the words, all right, and understand it. And so the type of training that we got, we didn't know we were being trained. We didn't know we were being trained. He had us read a number of books as well as reading the Quran and the Bible and the Messenger's books. We would also read books like Think and Grow Rich. We would read books, the Training of the 12. We read another book, Start Living and Stop Worrying. We and we read a lot of these different books by Napoleon Hill, George Clement Stone, Dale Carnegie, because he told us that these individuals were Muslim Shriners. and that they're Muslim Shriners in the last days. They're going to help us. All right, they're going to come out and help us, and they know who we are. They know exactly who we are. All right, and so he had us to read these books because he said in these books they were using principles from the Bible and the Holy Quran in these self-help books. So we would do that. We would read those books, and again we started out, as I said, we started out as a study group, and he would have us to try to set up study groups. You know, there were already established study groups in Phoenix, and but that was the foundation. Have the study group, and then go out and sell the paper. Of course, we had a program called The Dead and Bread, right? Go out and get the dead, and you get the dead, we'll get the bread, meaning the money, right?
Yes, sir.
So, and we would go door to door. We would knock door to door. We would not be on the freeway, on the highway, you know, and different things. We would go door to door, just like Master Farah Muhammad did. And the minister wanted us to do it that way because he put it in the final call, April of 1979, edition of final call, go door to door, right? Or I think it was a letter he wrote telling us go door to door. And that way we would be able to understand who our people were. We would be able to find out what their needs were, right? Because maybe they don't want the paper, but they might want fish. They might want the pie. They might want a tape, right? Or they might just want to talk, right? So this was an opportunity to start study groups in areas that we don't have study groups, right? But this is not going to happen if you're on a street corner, okay?
Yes,
right?
sir.
You got to get in the neighborhoods, right? So we would map out the neighborhood. The squads would get together, right? And we would spend 1 hour a day, just 1 hour, all right, on the weekday, just 1 hour. He said, just give me 1 hour a day of your time after work. Let's go knock on the doors. And we would write down the names, addresses, and what their interests were, what the people were interested in, all right? So we could come back, and maybe they're not interested in the paper right now, but they'll be interested in maybe the fish. So that would develop. And we did have fish at that time. We used to sell the blue seas whiting. I don't know if you remember the blue seas fish. We used to have that many years ago. Prior to that, it was the whiting H&G, the headed and gutted fish that was in the box. But this allowed us entrance into the homes of the people. All right. And so that was the program. I spent a great deal of time with Brother Jabril and getting to know him, and you know, coming to find out a lot about him. You know, he was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's confidential minister. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad called him his confidential minister. Okay. Brother Jabril is a brilliant man. He could have had a career in baseball. And a lot of people don't know that he nearly got scouted or was nearly got recruited by, I think it was the San Francisco, by the New York Giants, or one of those teams at the time, professional baseball team. He was an outstanding baseball player. And one of the things, you know, and he chose the nation over baseball. Okay. And one of the things that he would do to relieve stress was he would go to the batting cage and hit balls, or he would look at boxing. He loved boxing. You know, him and the minister loved to watch the fights, you know, and things like that. So he enjoyed that. And other than that, it was purely about the mission, purely about us understanding who Minister Farrakhan was and is, okay, and relative, and who we are, all right? Because a lot of times we want to understand who the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is and who the minister is, but who are we in relative to them? right? And that's where our self-confidence comes in. If we understand who we are, we're valuable people, right? We didn't just come into this on our own. Someone came to us and presented the teachings to us, but you know, Allah chose us. So we have to be careful. And this goes to the laborers. We have to be careful how we treat the believers, right? We have to be careful how we treat, because these are not your followers. I'm going to say what Shah used to say. These are not your followers. These are the followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad under the guidance of Minister Louis Farrakhan. So you have to be careful, because if you treat them badly, Allah is watching you. So, and that's important. We have to treat them, and we have to understand that the believers, the people who come in the mosque, are going to come in with all different types of issues and niggitudes and attitudes, and right? And that was us one day. That was us a few days ago. And we have to understand, we have to be patient, sabr. We have to be patient with them. And so I think I told you a couple weeks ago that I use the Dianetics. The Dianetics helps me to purify my soul.
Yes,
so
sir.
That I could be a better servant to my brothers and sisters, and so on. But anyway, getting back to the ministry, that was his assignment. That was one of his major assignments, was to help Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan to strengthen the ministry class. And I had the opportunity, the honor, and the privilege to help him with that process. A lot of people ask me, did I ever get a chance to teach in Phoenix? Yes, I did. I was a first officer in Phoenix at one time, and I was also had an opportunity to teach on the rostrum. But all of the brothers did, because one of the things Brother Jabril did to us was he had us rotating as lieutenants. He had rotating lieutenants every week or every 2 weeks. Two brothers were the lieutenants for that particular month or for that particular week or whatever. And he also had the brothers at the time go up on the rostrum and teach for 15 minutes. Right? We had to teach for 15 minutes. And so I had opportunity to do that. I had an opportunity to speak before the brothers in the FOI, and so it was phenomenal training. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about Brother Jabril and Captain Shah, and different things that they said to me, that it just resonates in my mind, especially Brother Jabril, because I spent a lot of time with him, especially when, he wasn't the minister over the mosque, mosque number 32. I spent a lot of time with him, helping him, myself and his son Bernard Kushmir Muhammad. We spent a lot of time in the house helping him out, going through different things, trying to help him to organize his papers and things of that nature, and so on. So I had an opportunity to ask a lot of questions. We even went out with Brother Jabril to Tucson, Arizona. We went out to sell papers, and down in Tucson, they didn't have a mosque in Tucson, and we went down there, and we not only sold out all the papers we had, but we were able to start a study group in Tucson. All right, and I don't know if it's still going on. I'm not sure, but I know we were able to get things going down there. We got the first Sunday, we got about 20 or so, 25 people showed up to hear the teachings. And then after that, it kept rolling from that point on. But he went with us to show us how to do it. He showed us how to do the papers. So he didn't just talk it, he did it. All right, he did it. And so I do want to say this, talking about my brother, I'm going to defend him. People need to understand that prior to 1975, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad may have said things about our brother that was not what one would say not too kind. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said things about him to keep him away from us because he knew too much, right? We're talking about a man who knew up until the day that when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was leaving, right? And also knew who the Imam was and who the minister was, right? So, and this was on his own study, right? He knew this. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had to throw dirt on him to keep him away from, or keep those away from him, right? And so many of those distasteful statements that were made about our brother, you know, people still today on this side of Calvary still use, all right? They still use it, all right, because of jealousy and envy or whatnot, all right? But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad did that to keep him away from the crazy people, or keep him away from people, because remember, that was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad departure was a military operation, and he couldn't afford anybody messing that operation up, right? And so you know, Brother Jabril, you know, didn't talk about it too much, but it was something, you know, a lot of dirt was thrown on him, you know, but it was for his sake and for the sake of the believers, you know.
All praise due to Allah. Beautiful, yes, sir. People showing you love all across the country, sir. Brother Roosevelt says, all praise due to Allah. Thank you for the pure history, and people are giving you likes and shares as well. Thank you very much. I wanted to ask you, who did Minister Jabril see Imam Warrith Deen as?
He realized that the Imam was going to be the person who was going to take over the nation and bring the nation down and take the nation, you know, was going to be part of the fall of the nation. Well, we all knew that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the Theology of Time series, he told us that the minister put the minister in his seat, right? And he told us to follow the minister and do what he says and don't go where he doesn't go and so on. So we know that, right? We all knew that, right? But there was also another group who was told that the Imam, because remember, Master Farad Muhammad wrote on the back of the door that, you know, wrote W.D. Muhammad, wrote Imam's name on the back of the door. And it was taught in the nation, especially in the 30s, 40s, 50s, that the Imam was a special son and he would do a special job and he had a special duty, a task to do and later on. And he was a very spiritual man. And so, so what happened was that here it is, you have the minister, right? The minister's being told one thing, and then you have the Imam, you know, being pushed up for leadership. It wasn't until 1975 when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad departed that he realized who the Samari, or who I call him the Samari, or who the individual was that would take the nation down, and that the Honorable Louis Farrakhan at the time, and he speaks about this in a lot of tapes, various lectures, how rather than cause bloodshed and division, he went to the Imam and he spoke to the Imam and he says, if you know what to do, then I'll follow you. And so therefore, the minister also went down as well. Okay, instead of taking the seat, and taking the leadership, he decided to follow the Imam. And right after the Imam took over, the picture of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad came down. Okay, they took the seats out of Mosque Maryam. Okay, and all of this is written that it would happen. All right, and if you go to and I'm not going to read. I want the believers to do it on their own. But you can read about this, about Korah and Moses, and Korah and the 250 men of renown. You can read about that in Numbers, in the book of Numbers, and how the Israelites murmured against Moses and Aaron, and you can read about in Numbers 16, 1-35, you can read about how Korah rebelled against Moses, and he took the 250 men or princes of renown down with him. Well, prior to 75, there were 250 ministers. Right? And most of them followed the Imam. The Imam took the pictures of the messenger down, changed the name of the school from University of Islam to Clara Muhammad. In fact, he closed the schools, right? So the students were like, didn't know what to do. A lot of students ended up in public school again, right? And a lot of the believers went insane, because of the changes that the Imam was making. The Imam was every minute he was changing his name, or who his identity was. He's the Mujaddid, and he's the awakened one, and all of these different terms. And all of this is written of him to do. If you read in the book of Maccabees, you read about Antiochus Epiphanes and how Antiochus vandalized the temple and erected an idol and desecrated the holiness, the holy of holies, and sacrificed a swine on the altar. Well, prior to 75, that's what the Imam did. He didn't actually bring a pig, but he invited white people to come into the mosque. Right? He took the chairs out of the temple. Right? He talked about his father and Master Farah Muhammad in a way that wasn't too pleasing. Right? And all of this is what went down in the temple. Right? And these are things that he made it illegal. Antiochus Epiphanes made it illegal for Judaism to be practiced, or for the Jews to read the Torah. Well, at the time, what did they do with the books? The Message of the Black Man. No one wanted to read those again. They made those hard to find, or you couldn't even find the Message of the Black Man. In 1976, 77, you could hardly find one. If you could find it, right? And so on, and it wasn't until later on, and it's a wonderful story. It's a story of Hanukkah, and it shows you how Matthias him and his 4 sons decided to rebel against Antiochus, and as a result, they took back over the temple in I think in 3 years. Right? And they reestablished the religion, the Torah and everything back again. So so our history is in the scripture. All right? Our history is in the scripture. We are walking, and this things that Brother Jabril was teaching us, that the history that we read in the Bible and the Holy Quran, we are walking that. We walk that history.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right, and even in the Quran, you could read in Surah Taha, which is Surah 20, right, verses 90 to 91. You read about the Samiri, right, who was a rebellious follower of Moses, who created the golden calf, right, and attempted to lead the Hebrews into idolatry. Well, that's what we were led into, worshiping a spook god. Okay, again, by the Imam, right? And so by 1976, 77, you didn't even know the Nation anymore. Nation wasn't around anymore. It went from Bilalian News to World Community of Islam to Mosque Cares. I mean, every time you looked around, the names were changing, and then people were getting confused, right? I've had believers from prior to 1975 tell me that, when the Elijah Muhammad was around, certain things wouldn't have went down, like the neighborhoods that were once safe, no longer safe anymore. Prostitutes and drug dealers felt comfortable selling drugs and selling them for sales in front of the mosques. That would not have happened prior to 75. Okay, and that would have never happened. Okay, and so these are the things that happened. Even Imam Siraj Wahaj, who is a Sunni Muslim and a famous Sunni Muslim speaker, said to me and Imam Louis Omar, or Minister Louis Omar, Louis 6X, he told us on the corner of Nostrand and Fulton Street, he said to us, he said, brother, I've been a Sunni Muslim for 30 years, but I never experienced the brotherhood like the brotherhood I had when I was in the FOI. Never experienced that. And this is a Sunni Muslim now. And he said that if it wasn't for the training that I got in the FOI, I wouldn't have been able to clean up this neighborhood, Fulton Street. Now, I grew up in New York, and I knew what Fulton Street and Nostrand Avenue used to look like, right? It used to be prostitutes and pimps and drug dealers, and prostitutes used to come up to the window of your car, okay? And Siraj and those brothers that took over that corner store, that corner building there, they cleaned that area up. But they learned that from their FOI training. So let's not get it twisted, right? That they learned that from their training in the FOI. That's how they cleaned up that neighborhood, okay? And praise be to Allah, that they were able to do it. So that's what happened. A lot of people lost their minds. I met some of the people who actually lost their minds. I remember driving with Captain Shah one day. He was giving one of the staff members a ride home. His name was Joe Mafia. He used to work for Don King headquarters. Joseph Mafia, light skin, really light skinned guy. Looks like he's white, but he's black. And we were driving down Fifth Avenue in New York, and this guy was making a bunch of racket and noise and carrying on, and and holding up the traffic. And he's screaming and yelling. And Captain Shaw rolled down the window and said, "Hey, brother, come over here. Come over here for me. Come here. You can't be acting all crazy like that in the street." And he gave the brother $20. And the brother snapped to attention. Said, "Yes, sir, brother Captain." And walked back off to the sidewalk. Well, me and Joe Mafia, we were blown away. We were like, well, who is that? What was that about, right? Captain Shaw told us, he said, "Brother, that's a casualty of war." He said that was a brother who was in the mosque, in the Nation. He just went off. He went off and lost his mind, And I think that Captain Shaw was depressed by this, and I think he was depressed by what he saw. He was very, very loyal to the family of Mr. Muhammad. He was very loyal to the Imam. He was very loyal to the family of Mr. Muhammad. And I think he realized that the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was the answer. But he just didn't know how to pull himself away from his friends and the people he was loyal to. But he realized, because I would ask him, I would say, well, brother, I remember, if the FOI was around, this would never happen. He said, yeah, brother, you're right. I said, FOI was around, this one. He said, yeah, brother, you're right. And I would I would be picking at him, but he would say, yeah, brother, you're right, you're right, you're right. But I think he was depressed, and he ate himself to death. I mean, he didn't eat very well. He didn't maintain a very good diet, and he had congestive heart failure, and he just passed away in his sleep. But he was depressed about what he had saw had happened to many of his comrades. I think even Minister Henry, Brother Najee's brother, he had stomach cancer. He had to beat it, and then it came back. It came back after the nation fell. It came back, and that happened to a lot of believers who had beaten diseases and cancers and things, and as a result of the depression, the mental health, the issues, it took them down. And I think with Captain Shah, because the minister wanted to bring Captain Shah back. He wanted him to leave Don King because he didn't think Don King was worthy of Captain Shah's employment, and for that fact, a lot of the Muslims in the community didn't feel that he was worthy of working for Don King, and Don King was not a nice man, all right, at all, and when the minister wanted to get him away and bring him to the nation, bring him in the nation, and bring him to Chicago, help him to lose the weight, put him on a diet, and help him to lose the weight, and help and have him to help your father, who at the time was the supreme captain, and to help him to help the other captains in the nation. That was what I think the minister wanted to do, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen. He passed away in 92, 93. So, yeah.
Great history. Yes, sir. And people are showing you love all across the country. Thank you, everyone who's watching on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And we can't wait. Shout out to all the people who are watching on YouTube. My sister Naima said that's beautiful. Truly appreciate all the history on the People's Podcast. Thank you very much for watching. Shout out to brother Kente. This is the auntie, brother Musa out of New York, who worked worked with Captain Yusuf Shah as well, who's always in the comments and showing love on YouTube. What I wanted to ask you, sir, is let's stay right here with the Imam, and then we have so many questions. Please put your questions in the comments. Let us know what city you all are watching from. The Imam, what was his main point that seemed to be driving him to go in the direction that he went?
The Imam never believed that Master Farah Muhammad was God. All right, and this was cultivated as a youth, as a young man, when Imam Elijah Muhammad was arrested and taken to prison. Many don't know that Sister Clara Muhammad was running the Nation of Islam. All right, she ran the Nation of Islam along with the other sisters, Sister Bernstein in Detroit and some of the other sisters. They ran the Nation of Islam because all the men were in jail. Okay, and so as a result of having the pressure of running the nation, okay, and having to manage her family, okay, and having to deal with the FBI and the school board, it took a toll on Sister Clara, right? She had stomach issues. She had ulcers. It took a toll on her. And there's a wonderful book, and I'm going to show you. This book right here is called Mother of the Nation, Clara Evans Muhammad, wife of Elijah Muhammad, mother of Imam W.D. Muhammad. by Dr. Zachariah Muhammad. All right. And I learned a lot about Sister Clara from reading this book, a lot um, about what she did and her, and how she was very instrumental. Anyway, the Imam, as a young man, he's very close to his mother, very close to his mother. So he saw the issues that went down, how they didn't have enough food, they were starving a lot of times, they were mocked, they were ridiculed, but Sister Clara kept Islam as the driving force in the home, right? And she made a promise to Master Muhammad that she would make Islam the forefront, and she would keep the teachings, and she would teach her son. And so I think what happened is that when the Elijah Muhammad came home, he started to, take over, and he started to impose discipline. And he hadn't been around for 7 years. And a lot of them didn't know him that well. Okay. All right. And so he started to impose discipline. And so there was a little, animosity there, I think, especially with the Imam. But then later on, I think later on, not what I think, what I know, because Shah told me, he said that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the 50s hired a man by the name of Jamil Diab. His father, he was a Palestinian, and he hired him to teach Arabic and Quran to his son and to there at the University of Islam in Chicago. And Jamil Diab was a Palestinian Muslim whose father was a scholar in Palestine. He was he was a grand mufti in Palestine. And what happened was Jamil Diab began to teach, to pull the Imam to the side, and Akbar and Donnell Kareem and some of the other ones there, Hassan Sharif and so on, pulled them to the side and said, your father not teaching you right, about this Master Muhammad. He's not Allah, and so on. And so when word got back to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that Jamil Diab was doing this, he fired Jamil Diab. And he fired him and told him, look, how did you know what I wanted to do? He says, if you had come to me and talked to me, you and I could have had a discussion. But instead, you're going to go behind my back and talk to my children. So he fired him. He fired him. But the seed had been planted. Okay? And so he taught the Imam Quran and Arabic. And he taught Akbar Muhammad, who went to Al-Azhar University. And Donnell Kareem is well known as a gifted reciter of Holy Quran, even to this day. He's still alive, and so on. And so that began to color his view of who Master Farah Muhammad was. That's where it began. That's where it began. And so from that point, he never believed that, and plus the suffering that he saw his mother go through, the suffering that his mother went through and the believers went through and his sisters went through. And there was an interview done by Nathaniel Muhammad. And Nathaniel Muhammad, when he did this interview, he was an old man. And he cried in this interview because he was telling the story about how his sister went to bed hungry and would cry herself to sleep. And this old man, Nathaniel Muhammad, was crying about that even to this day. The trauma of that situation impacted them. And so, that's why we have to we have to be careful, and we have to be with respect and honor to the Muhammad family, because they suffered. They suffered. They suffered so we could have Quran. They suffered so we could say Islam and Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam. They suffered. And so we have to give them honor and praise for what they did, for the good that they did, in this life. And so the Imam, if that was one instance with Jamil Diab, and then of course later on the early suffering that he saw his mother go through, and then later on when he learned about the domestic life, and he saw what his mother was going through as a result of the domestic life. That also colored his view. And of course, him and Malcolm, we know the history that him and Malcolm left. They defected together, they defected and left. And the Imam, went off, and some of the believers, some of the people that the Imam were very close to, left with the Imam, and and they were studying Orthodox Islam, and the Imam impacted the Philadelphia mosque a lot, because he wasn't really teaching in its totality the teachings of Elijah Muhammad. He was teaching the Philadelphia mosque when he was the minister in Philadelphia, because Elijah Muhammad made a minister at the Philadelphia mosque. He was teaching Quran mostly. He was teaching Quran, the prayer, the prayer during the Salat, and the history of Prophet Muhammad, and he was doing more of that. So Philadelphia, and you could talk to some of the believers in Philly to this day, they'll say that they in a sense were an advance in terms of their worldview of Orthodox Islam, because the Imam, that's what he was teaching them, even when he was a minister under the Elijah Muhammad, even though that wasn't the teachings, right? That's not what the messenger wanted the ministers to teach, right? So we know that he didn't agree with Master Farah Muhammad. He never believed that Master Farah Muhammad was Allah in person. He was very close to his mother, and he hated to see his mother go through what she went through with the domestic life. His mother said she believed in everything that was said about the teachings, but she couldn't get with the domestic life. She couldn't get over that domestic life. And that again caused her to have more ulcers, and eventually, stomach issues, and in 72 she passed away. The Imam again was put out in 63, right? 62. He went into prison for not going into the military. So he went to prison, he came out, and then he was put out of the mosque, him and Malcolm, or he left. And then he was put out again, I think in 68 or 69, sometime around there, but then he came back. And then in the 70s, this time around, the Elijah Muhammad left him alone. Because by that time, I think the Elijah Muhammad realized who he was and what his job and his role was to do. Okay. And so that's why, if you study the Bible and the Quran about the Sumeri, about Korah and the 250, you could see the parallels. And many of the ministers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad went along with Imam Warrith Deen Muhammad. As you can see, Save His Day 75, they were picking him up and raising him up, and right, and applauding him and whatnot. But then 90 days after that, man, he was fast at work. right? And he moved very quickly. And I think the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said that the Imam had a lot of good ideas, but he was moving too fast for the people. And he didn't give a chance for the people to understand. You know, the other thing is the Imam took advantage of the fact that 30%, or maybe, you know, the lessons talks about Yaqub, you know, 70% was satisfied, 30% with dissatisfied. Well, yes, that existed in the nation prior to 75. There was dissatisfaction. There was dissatisfaction. A lot of people were dissatisfied with the quotas. They were dissatisfied with the restrictive law. They were dissatisfied with the restrictions. Okay. And so this time, on this side of Calvary, under the leadership of the minister, instead of the minister, you know, the minister wanted us to start out as a study group, because a study group, you don't have the restrictions, right? You don't have a captain, a lieutenant, a minister. You don't have the restrictive law, so you can study, you can grow, you can fall in love with the law, you can understand what the law is, right? You can't love the law if you don't understand the law, right? Understanding precedes love, right? So you can't understand. So on this side of Calvary, the minister was like, that's so quick to become a mosque. Study, get deeply rooted. Let's grow. Let's grow nicely. Grow like a flower. Why are you so fast, right? And so the nation had to go down because, you know, when Malcolm left Detroit in 52 or 53, he started going to Springfield. He went to Springfield and Boston, and he started a mosque, a temple. Okay. And then he went to Philadelphia, started a temple. And then he went to Boston, started a temple. And he went to another place, started a temple. He was starting temples, right? And Elijah didn't tell him to start a temple, you know. I mean, but Malcolm was everything was fast, like a fast racehorse. And so, you know, this was too much. It was too much. I think it became a burden for the believers, for a lot of the believers, and so you had that dissatisfaction, and so the honorable, you know, when Wallace came in, when the Imam Warrith Deen came in, and he took advantage of that dissatisfaction, and people applauded it. You know, the sisters told me I don't have to wear the uniform no more, and sisters were ripping the garments off, man, and giving them away to the Salvation Army. And one sister told me you could go to the Salvation Army and find MGT uniforms on the rack, right? Brothers, you know, you don't have to sell no more quotas on paper. You sell them if you want to sell them, you know. And you know, and brothers applauded that. You know what? I don't have to sell 300 papers no more. You know, so brothers, you know, applaud that. So he took advantage of that. And gradually he got rid of the FOI, right? He eliminated the FOI, right? The police force of the nation, the military training. He eliminated that, right? And the MGT class, instead of it being the Muslim girls, he called it some other name, but with Muslim women or something of that nature. And so he systematically destroyed the nation. Okay, systematically destroyed the nation, and bit by bit, he destroyed the nation. All right, and then the money, the businesses were sold off, the printing press was sold off to some company in South Africa. All the businesses went under one by one. And where's the money? Okay, where did the money go? Right, and so people who spent their nickels and dimes and donated money over the years, they weren't crazy. They weren't crazy because they couldn't trust leadership anymore. Because I put my nickels and dimes, and now where's it all? What was it all for? What was this all for? Right? And a lot of people couldn't rectify that. Some people went mad, like Dr. Alim said in his presentation. They just absolutely lost their minds. And so mental health is a real thing, brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Mental health is a real thing. So that is what happened during that time. And Brother Jabril talks about that in a series. And I'm gonna put it out there to the audience if you can find it. It's called Who Backs Up Brother Farrakhan and With What? The Los Angeles Lecture Series. It talks about what happened in the nation, what happened, how the nation went down, and who Minister Farrakhan is and was and now, and so on. Because that was one of the things that attracted me to studying with him and studying in Phoenix and coming to Phoenix, was he made this statement that if we don't know Minister Farrakhan like he knows Minister Farrakhan, we will never qualify. Okay? He will never qualify. We have to know who he is. All right? And by knowing who he is, we'll realize who we are.
Yes, sir.
Right? Because it's the 10,000 that's going to get the 144,000, and 144,000, we're going to get the rest of our people. All right? So, alhamdulillah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And you're getting great love and response. Thank you, everyone who continues to like, share the People's Podcast. Brother Nelson Ramos showing love from Massachusetts. Walaikum salam, sir. We're gonna have a quick 60-second commercial break, and we coming back. Y'all want to stay tuned for all of these great talking points. Thank you very much to our brother, Dr. Anthony Ishmael. And sir, is there a way that you, while we were to go on commercial break, that you can just unplug your headset and plug it back in? Because somebody was saying they're having trouble. It was breaking up a little bit. All right.
Okay. Yes, I will.
Yes, sir.
We're
gonna have a quick 60-second commercial break. Thank you, everyone who continues to like, share, and subscribe to the People's Podcast. For every Cash App to the People's Podcast, we greatly appreciate your support.
Does television and film editing. Please reach out to him if you need any of those services. Sister Miriam's ABC I Love Me, children's book and coloring book, and now Spanish book. All three available on Amazon.com. Sister Naima's Stay on Point Dance Academy, LLC. She teaches ballet virtually to young girls all across the country, right here in the studios of Atlanta, Georgia. Brother Kenneth's Bow Tie Maker Extraordinaire. He'll ship you bow ties anywhere across the nation. Dr. Henry Carter's King Henry Turkey Legs, right here in Atlanta, Georgia. Brother Rashad Muhammad's COVID-19 Disinfected Cleaning Services, out of Chicago. Student Minister Sharif Muhammad's book, A Soldier in the Movement of Christ, available on adulsharif.com. And lastly, Brother Joshua Muhammad's book, Cleopatra, as well as No Father, No Excuse, both available on Amazon. If you would like to donate or...
Perfect. Thank you, everyone who's watching, and thank our guest, our esteemed guest, Dr. Anthony Ishmael, who's given us some exclusive information as someone who was born in the Nation of Islam, and I'm studied profusely. I'm deep. I mean, I think I'm a historian with the history. Brother is giving me some stuff I've never heard and the exact dates. I appreciate your due diligence in your study of our history. I wanted to go back to the Imam being a minister in Philly, and you said him and Malcolm X left at the same time. What were they leaving for?
Well, the Imam left because, again, he never believed that the Master Prophet Muhammad, and I'll say it exactly the way he said it. I never believed that man in that picture was God in person. All right. And he never believed that his father was the messenger of Allah. Okay. But Malcolm left. Malcolm didn't leave for that reason. Malcolm left because of the incident that happened with Ronald Stokes in Los Angeles. Okay, that was a pivotal moment. But more importantly, Malcolm left because of the hurt and that he was feeling. Malcolm was an outstanding minister for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said on many occasions, Malcolm, if it wasn't for Malcolm, the nation grew because of Malcolm.
Yes, sir.
The Malcolm made him a rich man. And that, it was Malcolm who actually put the nation on the map, so to speak. And Malcolm was a great orator. He was a great speaker, a great representative for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But Malcolm was hurt because there were those in the ministry class who were jealous of him. All right. And they were daggers in his back. Okay. And there were those in the family of Mr. Muhammad who were also not too happy with Malcolm. All right. And it hurt Malcolm that here he is out there representing the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the teachings of Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He's bringing people to Islam, and his own comrades, his own people internally are treating him like this. And it hurt him to the core. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan talks about this in a number of lectures. All right. And I'm going to defer to the Honorable Louis Farrakhan to elaborate more on this, because right now the minister knows more about Malcolm than I think anybody on the planet. Because
Yes,
most of the people who were with Malcolm are passing away. All right. Sister Evelyn is still alive, thank God, and Minister Farrakhan and Thomas J is still alive, but we lost Yusuf Shah, who knew Malcolm better than anybody. He was with Malcolm from 1952. And Louis Omar, Louis 6X, who recently passed away. I was at his janazah. I helped to wash his body at his janazah. He was one of the...
Who was he, sir? Who was he?
Louis 6X was one of the ministers in Boss number 7, prior to 75, with Malcolm X. He was there. He was one of Malcolm's ministers. And then he later on became the minister at Mosque 7C in Brooklyn. And then later on, he was transferred to Mosque number 6 in Baltimore, Maryland. Okay, on Islamic Way. And he was the minister here in Baltimore, or in Baltimore, Maryland. Louis Omar, that was his name. The messenger gave him that Omar. And Minister Omar and Minister Farrakhan were very good friends. And they were good friends. I forgot my train of thought. What was I saying?
The jealousy of Malcolm.
Yeah, the jealousy. That Malcolm was hurt. He was deeply hurt by what was happening inside. And the minister said he would later walk in Malcolm's footsteps and feel the same, get the same type of feel, get the same feedback, from ministers in the ministry class at the table around Elijah Muhammad, who did not like the minister, who did not like Malcolm. Okay, and Malcolm was doing nothing but good. Okay, now Malcolm had his shortcomings. Let's get it wrong. He had his shortcomings. Malcolm, had some issues with women, the way he would talk and do things. They were brothers, and that's something that the minister could speak about, or maybe somebody else. But Malcolm had some shortcomings, like everybody else does. There was some jealous tendencies that Malcolm had, because there was a brother, and I'll share this with you. There was a brother by the name of Adam D. Minister Adam DX. And one day I was sitting with Captain Shah, and he told me, he said, brother, there was a brother by the name of Adam. There was a brother who was a better speaker than he said it. Just, I'm going to say it the way he said it. Shah said, it was a brother who was better speaker than Farrakhan and Malcolm put together. And I was like, well, who is this? And he said, Adam D. And I was like, well, who is Adam D? He said it was a brother out of Boston. And Adam D was one of the 5 or 4 or 5 brothers who went to Los Angeles to start the mosque in Los Angeles, California. Right? It was Adam D. It was Brother Jabril. At the time, his name was Bernard, Brother Bernard, Minister Henry, and there were 2 other brothers, and they went to California to start the mosque in number 27, and they were told to find their replacements. Go there, start everything, but to find your replacements. Anyway, Yusuf Shah told me that Malcolm put Adam D out of the mosque because Adam D had a drug problem. He had a heroin issue. And Yusuf Shah told Malcolm, said, why you gonna put the brother out, man? You know, I mean, brother has a problem. Let's try to work with him and help him out. Malcolm wouldn't hear nothing about it. Malcolm said, nope, he's getting time out. Right? And so Yusuf Shah told me he believes in his heart that Malcolm was jealous of him because he could speak, because he had great speaking abilities. All right. And so Malcolm had his shortcomings. We all know he had his shortcomings, but he was a fantastic representative for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And as a result of him not being able to deal with the hurt that he was receiving from the ministers and the criticism from the inside, and then the situation that happened with Ronald Stokes, okay, he began to change. You notice his speech started to change. He went from saying the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said this, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said this, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said this, and all of a sudden he just started speaking more nationalistic, more political, more Pan-Africanism, okay? Because he had become dissatisfied. And so when Kennedy got assassinated, it was told to all the ministers that they were not to make any comments about John F. Kennedy. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was supposed to come and speak at the Manhattan Center, and he wasn't able to come, so he told Malcolm to cancel it. Malcolm said, no, we put out a lot of money, I'll go instead. And he went, and of course, we know the rest is history. John Ali was in the audience, and he was the national secretary, and he reported it back to Mr. Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad, what Malcolm said, and Malcolm was put out, all right, from speaking publicly for 90 days, right? He was allowed to speak in the mosque, but he wasn't allowed to speak in public, okay? And there's some controversy around that, okay? And then after that, the rest is history. He left the nation, and we know what happened. Now, in the Nation of Islam, you had zealots. Let's not get it twisted. We had zealots. We had those who were very zeal. They had a lot of zeal. And I am of the opinion, I believe, this is my opinion. This is not the opinion of the Nation of Islam, not the opinion of Mr. Farrakhan, not the opinion of anybody. This is just my opinion. I want to state it out there for the record.
Yes, sir.
If Elijah Muhammad Jr. did not come to New York and speak to the FOI and make the statements that he made at that FOI meeting, all right, there's a possibility that things may have went a little bit differently. I'm almost sure there's definitely the FBI and Bossy and the government did not want a reconciliation, of Malcolm and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. They didn't want that to happen at all. But it would not have happened because of us. Because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that to leave Malcolm alone, don't touch him, leave him alone. Now, there were those in the nation who interpreted differently and said what they said, and people interpreted that, and events happened, okay? Events took place and so on. But, you know, as I said, as I told you on this on previous meetings, that, you know, Abdul Rahman Muhammad, the brother who came out with this Netflix thing, we have to be ready and prepared to deal with his part two. If he comes out with a part two, because
Yes,
he
sir.
is going to imply that our minister and others had something to do with it. Okay, and this time he's going to have backing. Okay, he's going to be backed by powerful people, by some money from some other people, right? We know who they are, right? Enemies of the minister. They're going to back him. So we have to be ready to deal with him, because he does not believe that we are Muslims. Does not believe that we are real Muslims. That's the way he put it, right? So we have to be ready to defend our minister and our platform and our position, okay? And I'm just a lowly believer. I don't have no position in the nation. I'm just a brother, but I'm ready to deal with him, okay? But we got enough scholars in the nation, Brother Demetric, Brother Abdul Salam, all right, Brother Ishmael, you know, we got enough scholars, female scholars, male scholars in the nation that could deal with him, okay? But, you know, we have to be ready, because they're going to try to come after us with that. That's just my belief.
Yes, sir. Beautiful. Okay, praise be to Allah. Everybody just hold on, because we got some great information and inspiration coming from our brother. But I want to stay right there on the point of Elijah Muhammad Jr. Who is he? Who was he in the nation, and what did he say?
Well, Elijah Muhammad Jr. was the assistant supreme captain of the Nation of Islam under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and the supreme captain of the Nation of Islam was Raymond Sharif.
Yes, sir.
And most of the letters and information that was sent down to the captains at that time came from Elijah Muhammad Jr. He was the assistant supreme captain, and he came to New York, and from what I understand, I never heard the tape, I never heard the lecture, but from what I understand, he beat up Captain Shah, you know, as to why Malcolm has been allowed to run around and say the things that he said, and so on. And so when you're dealing with when you're dealing with people, you got to be careful what you say.
Yes, sir.
You have to be careful what and how you say it, right? Because it could be misconstrued in a certain kind of way. So it was clear. Elijah Muhammad said, leave Malcolm alone. Don't touch him. Leave him alone, right? But other people had other ideas, right? Elijah Muhammad Jr. was, I believe, the sixth son of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and they named him Junior after his father, and he was, you know, whether or not he felt that what Malcolm was doing was wrong, and he felt offended by it, and he was just defending the honor of his family. I don't know. I've never spoken to Elijah Muhammad Jr. to get his side of the story. He passed away, all right? But I don't like the fact that Abdul Rahman Muhammad is calling him a thug, because you call him a thug, what you calling me? You calling me a thug because I follow the nation? You know, so, you know, we don't know what that man what was in his mind and what was going through his head. Abdul Rahman Muhammad was not in the Nation of Islam. All right, he became a Muslim after the fact. All right. Abdul Rahman Muhammad never, and I don't think he ever spoke to followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I don't know if there's anything on record where he ever spoke to Minister Farrakhan. Did you ever go have a sit down with Minister Farrakhan and get his side of the story? Did you ever talk to Sister Evelyn? Did you ever talk to Captain Shah? Did you ever talk to Louis Omar? Did you ever talk to Thomas J? Did you ever talk to the people who are around, who were there, right? To Brother Jabril, you ever talk to these believers? Or you just one-sided, right? So that's not scholarship, right? When you do that, that's not true scholarship. You go both sides, right? And the people who have written books about Malcolm are people who don't know Malcolm, right? It's very few, right? Brother Najee knew Malcolm. Brother Benjamin X, who was Malcolm's assistant minister and was there the day of the Audubon, he knew Malcolm. But a lot of these people who write these books about Malcolm, they don't know Malcolm. They didn't soldier with Malcolm. They didn't sleep in the same room with Malcolm. They don't know nothing about Malcolm, right? But they just talking out their lips, out their mouth, out of their neck. They don't know nothing. So they need, especially this brother Abdul Rahman Muhammad,
yes,
right?
Sir.
And I pray Allah that one day he will be a convert, right? Because the ones who are the hardest will end up being the converts, right? Will be good converts. But right now, he needs to sit down with the ministers, sit down with those of us, those who are still alive, okay? And get their understanding and their feedback as to what went on during that time, all right? And not just be so one-sided, and so on. So, do the love.
Yes, sir. Beautiful. All praise due to Allah. Thank you, everyone. Continues to show love. I want to go. We have so many talking points. If you have questions, please put them in the comments. I want to talk about the departure of the Most High Elijah Muhammad. We're going to come back to that. How you said it was a military operation. I like that phrase. But I want to come back to what happened after with the imam letting white people in the mosque and the picture of the Caucasian woman who had a headpiece on. Could you let us know about her?
Yes. It was a military operation. Prior to 1975, or somewhere around 73, 74, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was getting visits from various angels. He was getting visits from a lot of different angels that you read about in the Quran and in the Bible. I think one of them was on the stage in 1974.
Yes, sir.
Was actually on the stage that day. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that if Allah didn't tell him or tell him how he was going to escape the death plot, he would have no hope.
That's right.
And so this was a military, I call it a military operation, because we didn't expect the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to leave under the cover of death. All right. Many believers, I think, knew that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was going to go away to study and for 3 years, but they like now today, some believers have in their mind that the mother plane is going to come down and beam the minister up, and that's what's going to happen. Okay, let's not be simple-minded and think that way. Let's be practical and rational in our thinking, because that's what some people believe prior to 75. The Honorable Elijah was going to beam up in the plane, right? It didn't happen that way. Okay, so what happened is that when it was announced that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad passed away, everybody was caught, right? And so now when the Imam came and he was uplifted before the people, right? The people knew, the ministers up there knew the Imam's history. They knew his position in the past, that he never believed in his father's divinity. And he never believed in Master Muhammad. They knew that, but they fell like the Bible said in Numbers, right? In Numbers 16, that the 250 men of renown, right, went along with Korah and Dathan and so on, and they were consumed by fire, okay, and they were swallowed up in the ground. And the Samari who started the golden calf, all of this happened, right? All of this took place right before our eyes. We were walking through history, right? And so, but they went along with it. They went along with it because they were told that Imam was a special son and he was a special duty and he was a man with a mission and so on. And so we went along with the program. And by the time those of us realized what he was doing, it was too late, right? When he started dismantling everything, and he was talking bad about his father and about Master Farah Muhammad and family members who were a part of the domestic life of Imam Elijah Muhammad, it was too late. It was too late. It was too late. And those sisters, those wives of the Imam Elijah Muhammad, they suffered as well. They suffered. They suffered under the during that time. Okay, they suffered during that time as well. So we have to give them honor and praise for what they've gone through, and we honor them as our mothers in Islam.
Beautiful, yes, sir. Okay, and man, you giving us some great history, and we're gonna come back to that. Well, let's stay right there. So, how did the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad escape the death flight? If you don't think there was a mother plane that came,
all I know, brothers, he escaped. The man in that grave is not the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I mean, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's grandson said that the mole was on the wrong side of the face, and Brother Jabril knew this. He knew this, and that's why he was kept away. He was kept away. He had dirt thrown on him, and this is why I'm defending him, is because that dirt that was thrown on him has carried over to this side of Calvary by individuals who are jealous of him, okay? And whatnot. They're jealous of his relationship with the minister. They shouldn't be, right? Because if it wasn't for Brother Jabril, the minister got the book, right? And he got to the minister, and here it is, right? I mean, look, Brother Farrakhan was born in 1933. Brother Jabril was born in 3 years after, in the same hospital in the Bronx. Okay? And they always that's his little brother. He said, that's my big brother. I'm his little brother. That's my big brother. They always used to say, 7 up, 7 down. I'm 7 up, you 7 up, 7 down, right? And one of the things that Mr. Farrakhan said is that Brother Jabril writes like he speaks. In the minister's oratory, Brother Jabril writes the way he writes. His writing abilities, his literature, the books that he wrote, is like the minister speaking, and so on. And so one of the books that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, now let me say this: do you think that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad would call a man like this that he threw dirt on? Do you think that he would call him his confidential minister? Do you think that he would put his book, this is the one, on the mantelpiece along with his book? Right? Elijah Muhammad honored him by putting his book, Brother Jabril's book, which was a defense of him, on the mantelpiece, on the mantle next to his books. Okay? So that was done for a purpose. That was done for a purpose. It was done to keep him away so that things had to go down. This had to happen. Okay? It had to happen so that you and I could be here today.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. Now I want to go to the white
woman. Yes. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So Imam Warrith Deen Muhammad, I want to say it correctly, the Imam Warrith Deen Muhammad opened the doors to Caucasians, I believe in 1975-76. The first person that came into the I think to the mosque was a woman by the name of Dorothy 13X Dorsey. And I sent you a picture of her,
Yes, sir.
right? And then there was another sister, another person by the name of Diane, I forgot, X Williams in Oakland, California. Now, the Dorothy 13X Dorsey was a full Caucasian. Okay, she didn't have no original in her at all. It was a full Caucasian, and there's stuff on YouTube. You could actually see her doing an interview on YouTube, and she taught at the University of Islam for a short time, and then later on Clara Muhammad schools in Chicago or wherever that was. Sister, the other sister Diane, in Oakland, California, her mother was Eskimo. Her father was an Irish Caucasian, and she was married to a black man who came into the nation, and so that's how she came into the nation. Okay, and because she was half original, I believe they let her in, and they allowed her to come in. But if you looked at her, there's a book, I'll show it to you. This book, they have the pictures of her in here. They have the pictures of her in this book, along with Dorothy and the other brother that I told you about, Shabazz.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, Shabazz was in Newark. Saifullah Shabazz was in Newark, New Jersey, and he was never in the mosque. But he was a Caucasian who believed in the teachings, and he was a salesman, one of the top salesmen of Muhammad Speaks in the Newark area. And Minister Shabazz used to meet with him on occasion at the Muslim restaurant, to talk with him because he was concerned about that brother's safety, about him being Caucasian selling Muhammad Speaks, and so on. But he was not allowed into the mosque until after the Imam came into power. He didn't come in to the mosque. And I verified with Imam Nathari about Shabazz, because he came from the Newark mosque, and he said he knew Shabazz. Everyone knew about Shabazz. Shabazz was a Caucasian. He knew the teachings backward and forward. But he grew up in Newark. He grew up amongst black people. And so he thought he was black. Him and his family thought they were black, and so on. So, and so, yes, the Imam allowed Dorothy 13X to come in to the mosque, and that's what you read about in the book of Maccabees, allowing the swine to come into the temple, and desecrate the temple, man. So that's what happened.
Yes, sir. Okay, and we thank you for this great history, and thank you all for watching. This is a class, so we end this thing today. We have great interviews coming up all day today with this great Marathon of People's podcast. Thank you for every like, share, subscription, and anonymous Cash App that people have been showing love all across the country to help us keep going. I wanted to ask you about Mother Clara and her handwriting, Holy Quran to give, and how to give to the brothers while they were in prison.
Yes, Mother Clara, while the brothers were in prison, because they wouldn't allow the children to go to the white man's schools. And then, of course, during World War II, they arrested most of the men, a majority of the men who were part of the Temple of Islam at that time were arrested and were put into federal penitentiary. So Mother Clara would write verses of the Holy Quran She actually wrote it from Al-Fatiha, not in Arabic, but in English. And she would, when she would go to visit the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to get instructions, she would leave those pages with him. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad would use that to teach. He would teach the Quran. Okay. So for those Orthodox Muslims and like Abdul Rahman Muhammad who say that we are not real Muslims, okay, we are real Muslims. A Muslim is one who is a man of peace, right? One who worships Allah. And Sister Clara wrote the Quran, and that's what she wrote out. There was no message of black man in the 30s, right? There was no Hadith to live in the 30s. None of those books existed until later on. She hand wrote the Quran and gave it to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and Honorable Elijah Muhammad used that to uplift and keep the brothers fortified. And then, of course, 7 years later, gradually they started releasing brothers, releasing some of the brothers, and then eventually they let the Honorable Elijah Muhammad out as well.
Oh, praises. Excellent. Yes, sir. You're helping us get some great history. Can't wait to talk about Mother Clara. We got Caucasian with Dorothy. Ma'am, you're giving us so much history. Of course, Minister Jabril, Ms. Luz Farrakhan, we're learning so much. I wanted to ask you about the polygamy aspect of, like, or not to, we don't have to use that language, we say domestic life of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Did what was your defense in the early 80s and the rebuilding of that when people were attacked that point?
Well, there were those in the early 80s when the nation rebuilding, brother, to be honest with you, there were those in the nation, they couldn't even handle that. All right. And I remember talking to brothers who would tell me, man, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad only had one wife, and that was Sister Clara. We knew that wasn't true. Okay. You know, and again, it goes back to understanding you have to have it straight in your mind who Master Farad Muhammad is. Because if you don't, then you won't see the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in his true divinity. Right? And if you don't see the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in his true divinity, you're not going to get the domestic life straight. Okay? And so this is something the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had to do, and he did. Okay? As the other prophets of God did. Right? This is not the first time that the believers complained about the prophets' domestic life. Moses, right? Moses' sister complained about Moses marrying the Cushite woman. Right? If you go to Numbers 12:1, you read about Moses marrying the Cushite woman, and the Cushites were black. Okay, we know that a mixed multitude went out with Moses and Aaron, so we know that it wasn't just Israelites that are going to go out with Moses and Aaron. We're going to have white people going out with us too that believe. All right, there's going to be other nationalities that believe. Okay, so back then, man, brothers, they weren't ready. Brothers, sisters weren't ready to deal with the domestic life, right? But when I went to Phoenix, Brother Jabril put us through a course of study about the domestic life, and we studied the domestic life. We studied Moses' domestic life. We studied Solomon's domestic life, David's domestic life. We studied all of the prophets and their domestic lives, right? So we could have a healthy understanding of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's domestic life. And then it helped a lot to have Mother Tanetta around, okay, and of course, you know, from time to time, other of the wives, Sister Evelyn, and so on, would come around, and they would be afforded the opportunity to teach and to share. So we had that opportunity. So understanding the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's domestic life, it was very easy for us to understand, you know, Brother Farrakhan's domestic life. Okay, all right. But again, it's very important. Again, if we do not believe that Master Muhammad is Allah, God in person, we don't have that correct, and then we don't going to understand the divinity, and that's what happened to the people prior to 75. They did not have that firm foundation in the divinity of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Master Farah Muhammad. So it was very easy, again, the Imam to come and say, you know, my father, you know, he had these women, you know, and these women, you know, he had these extramarital relationship. He cheapened the domestic life. He cheapened it, okay? And it's something that's very divine, okay? It's very divine. Prophet Muhammad had a domestic life, okay? He had a domestic life, okay? And so on. So, and it doesn't mean that we should go out and have wives, okay? That doesn't give us that permission to go out and do that, you know, and whatnot. Now, but I will say this: I did ask Brother Jabril one day over coffee. I said, Brother Jabril, is there ever going to come a time when we are going to have to do this? And he said, no, brother, we're not all going to have to do this. You know, I mean, only those who might want to do this, because there will be a time, brother. Let's not get it twisted. There's going to be a time when what? Thousands of our brothers and sisters are going to be going over to Europe to fight this war, and hundreds are going to be returning. So what's going to happen to all those women? They're going to become lovers of themselves. You know, they're going to need husbands, right? So we have to become the spiritual and moral superior of our enemy. We cannot be superficial, and we can't be based knowledge, right? And lustful, right? The domestic life is not about lust, okay? It's not about lust, brother. About lust at all. It's a divine thing. It's a very beautiful thing if one understands what it is. Okay.
Crazy.
Yes.
Beautiful, excellent, and people are showing you love all across the country. Sister Aisha says Minister Jabril prepared us in LA as well. Wonderful. And I was going to ask you, speaking of Prophet Muhammad, didn't Malcolm X and Imam Warrith Deen know about Prophet Muhammad's wives and stuff? So why was that such a sore?
Yes. Honorable Elijah Muhammad said it. Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that he will never teach another minister like he taught Imam Warrith Deen Muhammad and Malcolm X. They knew about the prophecies. Okay? They knew the prophecies. Malcolm knew the prophecies. Okay? He knew about the domestic life. He knew about white people in Mecca. All right? That was a lie. That's a straight up lie about, I found white people in Mecca. And you know, that was just him being hurt and upset and just trying to throw mud on the messenger, right? He knew there were white people there. He went to Jeddah in 1959 for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, right? He was the person that went ahead to organize the Hajj, the Umrah trip. Okay, so he knew that there were white Muslims. Malcolm was intelligent, okay? That was all a big lie, okay? And he knew the prophecies, right? He knew about the prophecy. He knew about the domestic life. So to call the Honorable Elijah Muhammad an old man that was losing his mind because being with these secretaries and all that was wrong. And so that created zealots. Okay, you're gonna speak about the man that did everything for you, and you admittedly said that if it wasn't for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, you wouldn't be who you are, and you're gonna come back to you're a hypocrite. You became a hypocrite. Okay, you became a hypocrite. Now let's talk about the flip side of that, because what if Malcolm had come back, right? What if Malcolm had come back? because Abdul Rahman Muhammad says, oh, Malcolm would have never came back. How do you know? Are you Allah? You don't know, right? But if Malcolm had come back, right? Because there's no doubt that if the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had written Malcolm a letter telling him, come on back, son, he would have came back.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
He would have came back, right? When Malcolm was assassinated, Sister Clara, they talk about it in this book. She talks about it in the book, said Sister Clara was sick. Her and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was sick over that assassination. They had to have doctors come in. Okay? When the Honorable Elijah Muhammad found out Malcolm was assassinated, Raymond Sharif said that he cried like a baby. Okay? And I told you all the last time when Captain Shah was in Phoenix at the table with Minister Farrakhan, Sister Evelyn, and the rest of the laborers, some of the laborers who knew Malcolm, they were tears in their eyes. They didn't have foam coming out of their mouth, calling him a hypocrite. There was a public stance, but in private, the way they really felt about the man came out at that table, right? Now, yes, you would see tapes of Shah saying, yeah, or Malcolm was a Benedict Arnold, because that was the public position. That was the public position. That was the Shah believed that he was a hypocrite. He went back on his leader for the wrong reasons. But deep down inside, it hurt Shah. It hurt Shah the way Malcolm came up to him and told him about the domestic life, right? He just told him what happened. Shah told me, he said, how do you think I felt, brother, when Malcolm told me about the domestic life? How do you think I felt about that? You're just going to dump that on me, right? But see, Malcolm had another motive. See, he had another motive, right? And it backfired, right? Because Shah didn't go with him. And all the believers that he thought he was going to get to go with him, they didn't come to the nation because of him. They came to the nation because they believe in the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, right? So they stayed, okay? If you loved the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, you came because you loved the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and it was the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, not the teachings of Malcolm X, right? So, it backfired. It all backfired on him. But if Malcolm had come back, Brother Jabril told me, and he told others, that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad would have brought him to Chicago with his family, and he would have worked with him, and he would work with Malcolm to help him with his impediments, right? And he was going to put Malcolm over the national treasuries, right? He was going to put Malcolm over the national treasury. Malcolm was good with money. And Malcolm was really good with money. He was going to put him over the national treasuries and work with him for years. And eventually, he would send Malcolm to Atlanta to be the minister in Atlanta. Right? All right? Okay? That is the story, brother. All right? Okay? Now, Brother Jabril can't speak because he has aphasia, but I know he could write it, okay, and verify. But those were his words to some of us in a group session, that he was going to work with Malcolm, and work with him to deal with some of the impediments that he had, because he had some impediments. He had shortcomings, like everybody else. So, alhamdulillah, yeah.
Well, we getting some clarification right here, This is wonderful. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
All right. So, okay, we're going to come back to the Malcolm X point, but I want to talk about, the second point you said about Atlanta, but I wanted to ask about the messenger crying over Malcolm X being assassinated. You saying he was hurt because
he was hurt. He was hurt. He was hurt. He was hurt. Him and Sister Clara. Sister Clara loved Malcolm. Okay? From the book that I'm reading, Sister Clara loved Malcolm X. Malcolm X did a lot for that family. and he was a dedicated, sincere follower up until a certain point. All right, and it hurt people. All right, you can't tell me it didn't hurt the minister. It didn't hurt Sister Evelyn. It didn't hurt, certain people to see him go off like that, to see him assassinated, to him to come to that end. That hurt. That hurt that we were manipulated like that. Okay? These are human beings, brother. These are not thugs, like Abdul Rahman says that he thinks we are. We are not thugs. We're human beings, right? And these people were with Malcolm, unlike him, right? He don't know nothing about Malcolm besides his little research that he did. But these were people who walked with Malcolm, talked with Malcolm, ate with Malcolm, rode in the car with Malcolm. Some of these women were secretaries. Captain Shah's wife, Sister Sylvia, was his secretary in Philadelphia. Okay? Brother Jeremiah Shabazz, all these people, they were with Malcolm. Okay? They were with Malcolm. We don't interview them. We go off and we try to interview Peter Goldberg, and we interview all these other cats that don't know nothing about it, right? And whatnot. But we need to be interviewing the people who are alive today and get their story on paper, on tape, or videotape, or get the minister to put his memoirs down about Malcolm, let him write a book about Malcolm, and so on. That's what we need. Those are the people who know Malcolm. Right?
Powerful.
Not these Johnny-come-latelys that want to talk about Malcolm and whatnot. And anytime the brother Jabril wrote in his book, This Is the One, anytime you see people putting a postage stamp for Malcolm X and whatnot, you got a postage stamp and a T-shirt, and he's being propped up by the government, you know something is wrong. There's something wrong because he wasn't propped up by the government in the 60s.
That's
and
right.
the 50s,
That's right.
Right? So, yeah. But then go ahead, brother. What's the other question?
Yes, sir. Okay, the other question, and thank you very much, and thank you everyone who seems to like, share, subscribe. Well, the people who were upset with Malcolm for defecting and speaking bad about the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, how did they feel when Imam Warrith Deen was saying, like, dropping seeds and doing, like, going around before the messenger left? Like, how did they feel about him?
Well, remember now, when the Imam had the backing of the 250 men of renown, of the ministers, and he had the backing of the family, okay? All right? So it was a different situation.
Okay.
It was a different situation. And remember, the Imam was thought of as a very spiritual, divine man. The Imam, don't get it wrong, Imam was very deep when it came to the Quran, to Quranic Arabic, okay? And he was, in his interpretation of the Holy Quran, even to this day, when you read his translation of Quran, it's very deep, the language that he uses. So he was a very spiritual man. And so remember, he had the family backing, he had the ministers backing, he had the laborers backing, and that was it. Malcolm did not have the backing of the family. Okay. Malcolm did not have the backing of the family. He didn't have the backing of nobody besides the few people who left with him. Okay. And even though the Imam left for different reasons than Malcolm left, right? Left for different reasons. Because again, remember, if the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had come to Malcolm and said, look, let's sit down and talk, Malcolm might have came back, right? Right? That's not the case with the Imam. There were different reasons why they left, but they just so happened to leave at the same time, and it made it look like they were together, right? Yeah.
Beautiful. Yes,
Imam,
sir.
remember, the Imam never believed that Master Muhammad was Allah in person. He never believed that his father was divine or was the messenger of Allah. Okay, and he believed that Allah is a spook, and he believed in Prophet Muhammad and the Quran, and that's the foundation of his community. Okay?
Yes, sir.
But when they left the nation and they left the FOI, took the FOI out, you see what the community has looked like now, right? Nothing. It's hardly no businesses, no enterprises, no businesses. You know, as I tell you again, I've been to masjids that are under the leadership of Imam Warrith Deen Muhammad, and prostitutes are in the front selling their bodies. Crack addicts are in the front. That would have never happened prior to 75, brother, with the FOI on the scene. No way. No way, Jose. That would never have happened. Okay, it would never went down. And that's not just in Atlanta and New York and Washington, D.C. That's everywhere. Okay? That was not because the Muslims had respect. Muslims were respected. All right? So with the Quran and with Salat and with following Arab culturalism and whatnot, we lost our we have the Quran, we have the Arabic, but we lost our respect in the community. We lost our respect in the community, you know, and so there we go. We don't have the same, you know, the community, the world community of Islam or Mosque Cares or what, I don't know what they call themselves now, but it's not the same. It's not the same. It's right now they're in a lot of disunity, all right, between following the Imam's son, following there's other guy named Earl Abdul Malik Muhammad or there's a lot of division and unity right now in their community as a result, you know, and the minister said that. The minister said that would happen. You know.
Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. Well, thank you very much. Thank you all for your comments. I wanted to ask you, you personally, what advice would you give to future husbands?
I would spend some quality time with your wife. Go on a date night. You know, schedule a date night with your wives. I know sometimes when we get involved in the mission of uplifting our people, we can sometimes forget about our wives and our family. Spend time with your family, with your children, and get involved in what they're doing. Go to some of the things that they have going on at their schools. You know, spend some time, take your wife to go see a movie or a concert or do something nice, a picnic, you know, do something with her nice. Buy her a flower, a rose, a gift every once in a while. You know, it doesn't have to be expensive. It can be very simple, you know, but this is what we should do. You know, this is what we should do. And we should honor and respect our wives, you know, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here. It's because of our wives that we're going to be further into the future, right? As a father, we're going to be pushed into the future because of the children that she bore us. So we should honor and show honor and respect for our wives.
Excellent. Yes, sir. And Dr. Anthony, will you ever write a book?
I'm thinking about doing one. I'm supposed to be having some people that kind of assist me and help me with putting down some of the words and some of my experiences that I've had in the nation. It went so quick. You know, I can remember when I came in the nation, I was 17, 18 years old back in the 80s, and now I'm going to be 60 next month. You know, it seemed to go so quick, you know, but I'm not, you know, just because I'm 60, I'm not done yet. Okay. You know, I'm not done yet. I'm not retiring. Okay. You know, I still have a lot of gas in me, you know, and I say that the brothers and sisters in the laboring capacity don't utilize your brothers and sisters who are elders in your community. You know, especially if they want to help. Don't just be dismissive of them, because you don't know what they have in their heads
Yes, sir.
and what they could do to help. One of the things that Brother Jabril used to do at every mosque that he would go to is he would have them pass out a skills and interest form, so you can find out what your skills and interests are. You'll be amazed at the kind of people you have in your mosque.
That's right.
You might have a neuroscientist and you don't know because you never asked, right? You might have a brother who was a pastor in a church, and he had a church that was 2,000 people. You never asked, but you're jealous of him because he was a minister. You don't want him to take your position and so on, and all this jealousy and pain. Come on, man. Let's stop this nonsense, and let's utilize the people we have in our midst, and so we could uplift our people, right? There's plenty of work to be done, and for those of you out there who don't feel that you're being utilized or you're not being, don't leave the mosque, don't leave the nation. Go out and find an area and work out.
Beautiful.
And work out. Go start something. Go start. Go. There's plenty of place of room for us. You don't have to stay in the city where you are. You could go out in another part of the city where Black people all over the place, Hispanic, Black, all over the place, and go work out and start something, So instead of being frustrated, because that's what happens a lot of times to our young people. They come in, they get frustrated because they're underutilized, or they're not utilized like they should. And so they leave the nation and they end up working for the white man, or working for somebody else, or starting their own enterprises. And then once these enterprises blow up, now you want to use them, right? Just let's utilize our elders, let's utilize our young people, all right, and bring them into the fold, right? And let's find out what skills and interests our people have, right? Because they want to help.
Thanks.
They want to help.
Beautiful, yes, sir. And on that positive note, I want to thank you again, Dr. Anthony Ishmael, and for your sacrifices, the sacrifices of your family. May Allah continue to bless you and the family. And inshallah, this will be an ongoing thing where you come back more and more to help give us some history and some understanding on certain events that took place and are taking place. So we look forward to our working relationship and brotherhood. Thank you all for watching. I can't wait to put this on YouTube. Yes, sir. And I look forward to meeting you in person too as well, sir.
Yes, man. And whatever, I just want to say in closing, whatever I said that was positive, it all comes from Allah. Whatever I said that was not correct, that's from the shaitan. And if I said anything incorrect in terms of dates or people name, I stand corrected. As I said again, Brother Abdul Salam is our historian in residence, and so there might have been a few corrections, things that I said, but for the most part, I think I got it right. I think I got it right because I lived it. I was there. So anyway, but inshallah. So thank you again, Brother Joshua, for allowing me to come and spend this time, and thank the believers and the brothers and sisters who are listening to the podcast. And you have my phone number, and if anybody wants to reach out to me by email or phone number, or phone, ask me anything, that's fine. I'm an open book, open source. So I don't have any position or I'm not part of any laboring staff. So I'm open to help to saying, to helping out and so on. And so the manual I'm sending it to you. You should receive it. That is the FOI reference manual that Yusuf Shah we put together. And again, I just want to say this about that. Please do not utilize this manual. If anybody wants a copy, I'm more than happy to send it to you. But please don't utilize it as something official. Please check in with Brother Captain Mustafa, right? I'm hoping one day Brother Mustafa will call me and we can talk about it. I'll send him a copy because he never got, but inshallah. So we'll leave it like that. So may Allah continue to bless you and
Yes,
all
sir.
of the believers. I wish you all the best. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, sir. This is Joshua Leonard Muhammad signing off. Thank you all for watching. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, sir.